If you're currently dealing with pain on the outside of your hip that's worse with such things as walking or stairs, then this is the video for you. Welcome back everyone. My name is Zach Greenwood here at Performance Sport and Spine in Seattle, Washington. And this is a common issue that a lot of people suffer with, especially if you're dealing with something like gluteal tendinopathy or tendonitis. But the good news is that some simple and pragmatic tips that I can show you using just equipment you have in your house can be a huge game changer to reduce your pain and improve your function. Why this matters to you and why this is increasing your pain is I want you to think about my right fist as your gluteal tendon and my left fist is the bone, the great trochanter on the outside of your hip. Well, tendons are very good with tensile force, so up and down. They don't love compression or getting squished. Well, what happens is the tendon gets pushed into the bone, especially as your leg moves across into midline or this position called adduction. When you look at this chart right here, when your hip is in neutral, or where it should be, there's only 4 newtons of force. Now don't think about the newtons, just think about the 4. Well, what happens when it goes into 10 degrees or that leg goes more into midline, it increases. And at 40 degrees, it's over 25 times more compression. So you can see how this really matters. When you take that, now you add hundreds or thousands of steps and it really increases it, so you can see why walking is so painful. But the great news is with these simple tricks that I'm going to show you, you can really reduce this compression, i.e. reducing your pain and improving your walking. So it's really frustrating because it's so painful, but it's actually really easy to fix if you do the right stuff. The first change we're going to cover is the width stance of your feet. So people that walk with a very narrow stance, or especially if the leg crosses over midline, like the picture shows you right here, that can be a lot of compression and problematic. So a helpful cue is to think about walking with shoulder width apart and making sure that foot doesn't cross midline. One thing I found with my patients is every 4 or 5 steps, stop. If you find that that leg is too far in, work on pushing it out. Now you don't want to walk like a cowboy, but you want to find a wider stance that's going to take that compression off that tendon and reduce your pain. This video is all about gait changes and mechanics. If you want to know more about this condition, about how it presents, what to do, what not to do, and the best exercises, here's a video link in the upper right hand corner that will give you all the stuff. If you enjoyed the video so far, please like it, subscribe, and turn on notifications to get future updates. The next helpful cue is helping to reduce your stride length, so making more steps or shorter steps. The first helpful cue would be landing more softly or thinking about walking more quietly. So this is going to help reduce your stride length and reduce compression on that tendon. And then lastly is decreasing pelvic drop. So again, think of that kind of 90-90 angle. You want your hip in neutral. Every step that you take, if that pelvis kind of tilts down, you're putting compression into that tendon. So as you step, think about being tall on that hip. So kind of think about pushing your hip upwards can help keep that pelvis neutral and reduce the compression. And then for stairs, use the opposite hand. So if your left hip is hurting, grab the rail with your right hand to, again, keep that pelvis neutral and not letting your hips sink in, and also keeping a wider stance. So thinking about shoulder width apart as you step up. And I've also found that thinking tall on that hip. So as you step up with your left leg, grab the rail with your right hand and think tall on that hip. Now the next thing we want to talk about is you need to stop stretching and foam rolling that hip. Remember, compression or pushing that tendon into the bone is what's causing your pain. Well, pigeon stretches and foam rolling that area just smashes it more. Next we talk about dosage, so how much you're walking. With this, you probably just can't go out and just walk 2 miles if that's what you want to do. You got to establish a baseline. So let's say you walk a mile and the next day your hip is hurting too much. That's too much and you got to let it calm down and then try walking a half a mile. So you got to find the amount that your hip can handle without flaring it up and then gradually progress. About 10% per week is probably the best standard. Now with this, it's important to be able to monitor your pain, so knowing when you've done too much or just slightly irritated the hip. So a couple of general rules of thumb is that the pain is or discomfort is mild. So let's say a 3 or 4 out of 10 on the scale of 0 is no pain and 10 is the worst pain ever. There can be some increase in elevation for 2 hours afterwards, but by that next morning, when you wake up the next morning, your hip should be the same or better. If it's irritated or flared up, you did too much. So these 3 things can really help you know when you're doing like a yellow light, pushing into it cautiously, or a red light doing too much. And you're gonna know this is wrong because it's gonna hurt a lot. I've had people tell you that whoever it was said that, oh, that pain means it's working. Pain does not mean it's working. Pain means it's getting worse. So please put the foam roll away and do some light stretches, but do not aggressively push that hip into that bone. You can also use a cane or orthotics to help stabilize the foot and the opposite arm. So if you're walking, that cane can kind of help stabilize the opposite arm, which can be very helpful for some people. I've also made another video about the 9 most common myths about gluteal tendinopathy that really shows you that people don't get the right advice or non-evidence-based advice, and so their progress is hindered because they're doing the wrong stuff. We highly recommend you watch it because you'll probably learn a lot of cool things. And before we get to the exercises, I want you to think about the foot and the whole kinetic chain, which means the whole leg. And if the foot rolls in too much or out too much, it can put more stress on your hip. So I want you to think about a tripod and think about A, B, and C related to this picture that I showed right here. And when you're walking and standing, you want to have equal pressure on all 3 of those points, especially A and B. You don't want your foot to roll in too much or out too much. And doing this can help reduce strain upstream, especially into the hip. So when you're doing these exercises, or even through your day-to-day life, think about that tripod and think, am I even or am I uneven? So for this exercise, we're targeting the left hip. I want you to have a chair, a wall, or a pole to stabilize. And what we're gonna do is think of that tripod, think you're good, think tall in the hip, lift your leg up, and then hold. You wanna feel tension on that left hip. Now you can use your whole hand, but over time I want you to go to like 2 fingers or less and use as little bit of support as you can to strengthen this hip. Now at 30 seconds, I want you to progress to the next tier. The second tier would be no support. So hands on your pelvis, thinking tall on that hip with a good tripod position. I want you to lift your leg up and hold it here for 30 seconds. And then the last tier, we're gonna add dynamic movement. So again, that left hip, think tall in that good tripod position, bring up, and then I want you to bring your leg back and forth to mimic walking somewhat, but again, keeping that tall in that hip and that tripod as level and even as possible. For this one, we're gonna strengthen the outside hip. So holding on with the chair for level 1, we're gonna raise up slow, 1, 2, pause, and come back. Now try to keep your pelvis from tilting, and as you come back, don't bring your leg all the way across because that's gonna put compression. So go out and then stop about shoulder width apart and repeat. Level 2 would be no support. So tall in the hip, good tripod position, raise out, pause, and come back. You want to go slow enough that there's no momentum. It's all about balance and control. Don't progress from the chair until you can do this pretty easily, at least 4 times. Last exercise is a step up. So have a small step in that chair or broom. And we're going to put our right hand and use our left leg to step up, tall in that hip, pause, and then return to the starting position. When you're doing this, make sure to push hard with the up leg and don't compensate by pushing up with the other leg. So tall in the hip, good tripod position, and then make sure that pelvis is level. Level 2 would be no support. So again, hands on your pelvis to make sure it's not tilting, good tripod position, tall in that hip, pause, and then return to the starting position. Make sure you step all the way through and straighten your knee and your hip to get all the way upright. Make sure to pause for a second and return to the starting position. Thank you so much for watching our video on this issue. We hope you found it helpful. We got a lot of other great videos about this condition, so make sure to check them out.